We're on the chapter entitled Descriptions of Autumn, which is chapter number 20, I think, isn't it? 20. And I think we're at this paragraph which begins, sometimes in addition to the roaring thunder of the clouds. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes in addition to the roaring thunder of the clouds. That's where we are.
Yeah.
And after the reading, we'll chant japa, one round of japa. Okay. And I'll just start with the invocation song now. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. So our first reader will be Jai Prakash Prabhu. Surprise, surprise. Thanks, Prabhu, for always putting your name down first.
No problem. Unless somebody wants to read first, I don't mind.
I hope we can have other readers. I can see
Your mom wants to read.
my mum would also like to read next. Vimal, we're on chapter 20, which is called Description of Autumn. And the paragraph begins, sometimes in addition to the roaring thunder of clouds. Yeah, got that? Yeah, good, okay. So please put down a number for the reading order. So Jay Prakash is number 1, my mum's number 2, and then if anyone wants to be number 3 and onwards, then we can share the reading amongst us. Don't be shy. Okay, Prabhu, over to you.
Sometimes, in addition to the roaring thunder of clouds, there is an appearance of rainbow, which stands as a bow without a string. Actually, a bow is in the curved position because it is tied at its two ends by the bowstring. But in the rainbow, there is no such string, and yet it rests in the sky so beautifully. Similarly, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends to this material world, he appears just like an ordinary human being, but he is not resting on any material condition. The Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he appears by his internal potency, which is free from bondage of the external potency. What is the bondage for the ordinary creature is freedom for the personality of Godhead. In the
Okay,
rainy
we can
season,
just pause there,
yeah.
just because there is a number of analogies in this section. So we'll just discuss them one at a time rather than do a whole paragraph of multiple points. So this is, in this first paragraph, there's 3 analogies. So this first one, and as you know, we've been reading from previous weeks, there's an analogy, a comparison with nature, the nature of the natural world around us, and there's a philosophical point which we can remember when we see these different phenomena in the world. Okay, so what is being compared here? We could just discuss this first one for a moment. What is the natural phenomena that was mentioned here?
The rainbow,
Okay.
that's compared to the bow and string.
Okay. Yes.
So they
And
look similar, but obviously the rainbow is a natural sort of phenomenon, which there's no sort of boundaries as such, or it's not resting or tied to anything. It's just there.
yeah. So then there's an analogy here as well, so that the rainbow is like something, and the bow which has a string is like something. So what is the comparison that's made? anyone see that?
Is it a rainbow compared with the personality of Godhead?
Yeah, that's right. And the bow is compared to, does anyone know?
Ordinary human beings.
Yeah, that's right. So really amazing example here, which we can discuss a little bit. So when whenever you see a rainbow, it's such a beautiful thing, isn't it? My daughter, she's 3 and 3.5 now, and I remember just kind of towards the end of summer, there were some rainbows, and it was like complete fascination for it, especially when you see it in children. Their fascination. Uh, it really kind of brings it to life more, isn't it? The rainbow. So, rainbow is such a beautiful thing, a wonderful thing, a natural phenomena. Yeah. Um, and rainbow, the word has within it bow, which is similar to a bow because of the shape. It's like the shape of a bow, the arch of a bow. But a rainbow is free from a string. The reason the bow, like an archer's bow, is in that arch shape is because it is held by a string, but the rainbow isn't held by a string. So the comparison is made there. So what does that string represent in this analogy? It says that the Supreme Personality is also like a rainbow because he's not bound to this material world like any other person. Ordinary people are bound, like the way that an archer's bow is bound by a string. It's held in place the way that the archer's bow is held in place by a string. But Krishna has a beautiful rainbow feature which is not bound. It is not bound to this world. It's not bound to the material conditions. You know. So we're all bound, aren't we? Currently, we're in lockdown now again. So we're not free. So this is what it means. Like although this is kind of an extraordinary time, we're always bound to something or other. Actually, in this world, the state of mind we have, um, the the environment that's around us, it all influences us, isn't it? Right? So these are kind of different kinds of bindings in the material world. Hmm? Whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, when he comes in his incarnation from the spiritual world to the material world, he doesn't have these bindings. He's not bound to anything. He's always liberated. He's always free from any material tinge of material life. So this is the first analogy. Any thoughts on that? Any comments or questions?
I think when Krishna appears in any avatars, he may be acting, well, not acting, he may be like seem like a human being, but he is not really bound by all the karmas. So he's aloof of all the karmas, although he looks like he's bound, but he's not bound because he's got a spiritual body, and the material things doesn't affect him as it would affect any other jivas.
Mm. Yeah. So Krishna, he's free to do as he likes, and this is why people become bewildered when they see the pastimes of Krishna. They think, how can Krishna do this and how can Krishna do that? But they don't understand who Krishna actually is. Hmm? So can you think of any examples how Krishna performs his pastimes and he's completely free to do what he likes?
Lifting the Govardhan hill.
Yeah, lifting the Govardhan hill. So there's
He,
the weight of the hill isn't a restriction for Krishna. Hmm? Yeah. One that I was remembering was the Vajraharana pastime when Krishna steals the gopis' clothes. People say, "How can your God be like that?" It sounds like what kind of God do you have? But Krishna is not bound. He can do anything he likes. He can steal the gopis' clothes, and then he made the gopis come out of the river Yamuna without their clothes to come and collect the clothes. So they had to come before him without any clothes. and they were embarrassed, So people may say, well, how can you worship such a god? But at the same time, we should know that Krishna can see us at all times and all places. Anyway, he doesn't have to steal our clothes to see what we look like underneath. Krishna he's all seeing, he's all knowing. So it's nothing for him to see, And also he's not affected by what he sees. Also. So Krishna can actually do anything and not be influenced by it, not be influenced by the modes of nature. Because Krishna wanted to give a benediction to the gopis, they were praying that Krishna would become their husband. And so Krishna took their clothes and then they had to go before him. And only the husband can see the partner in that way. So in this way Krishna fulfilled their desires actually. So that's the deeper point in that pastime. But Krishna does all these things because for the thoughtful person, they will understand. For someone who learns from the in the line of authorized gurus, they will understand actually, yes, Krishna can do this and it's not an audacious thing to do. But for others, it's very bewildering how Krishna can do what he pleases and still be the Supreme Lord. Yeah, so nice point. Thanks, Mom. So unless there's any other comments or questions, Jay Prakash Prabhu could carry on.
In the rainy season, the moonlight is covered by the clouds, but it is visible at intervals. It sometimes appears that the moon is moving with the movement of the clouds, but actually the moon is still. Due to the clouds, it also appears to move. Similarly, for one who has identified himself with the moving material world, his actual spiritual luster is covered by illusion. And with the movement of material activities, he thinks that he is moving through different spheres of life. This is due to false ego, which is the demarcation between spiritual and material existence, just as the moving cloud is the demarcation between moonlight and darkness. In the rainy season, when the clouds appear for the first time, the peacocks dance.
Oh yeah, so this is the next analogy now. This one is about the moonlight, right? So,
Yes.
so how is the moonlight and the clouds compared? In this analogy which we just read. So it said that when the clouds are moving, then it looks like the moon is also moving. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever looked at the sky at night and you see the clouds moving past the moon? And it looks like the moon is even wavering, isn't it, or moving? Hmm? It's like an optical illusion. Of course, the moon isn't moving, but it seems like that, isn't it? Am I the only one that's... Has anyone else noticed that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is anyone familiar with that? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's a comparison made between this and something. And what is the comparison?
Is it the movement of material activities? So he thinks that he's moving through different spheres of life.
Right, yeah. So a person will think, he or she will think that they're moving through different phases of life. So what could that mean, moving through different spheres of life? What does that mean to you all?
Is it when you're little and then, I don't know, I'm just guessing, I could be wrong. And when you go through your childhood, teenage years, adulthood, and...
Yeah, so like growing up, yeah. It can be taken in that way, yeah. So moving through different ages, different stages of life, growing up. Yeah. Anything else?
Hare Krishna. Just a thought that came to mind was that like when you see things moving in the material world, like you move into a different house, you physically see things moving. It's like you're occupied with busyness. You're busy, busy, busy. It can give you the illusion that that's progress and that's real, and really all that it is it's just the material world, and it's just false ego. It's not that complete surrender to Krishna. It's like, yeah, it's that illusion of, oh, because things are moving, I must be making progress, whereas you are in some respects, but really it's just more material integration.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Moving house. I've moved house a few times in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone else experienced that, moving home recently? Yeah. Do you realize like how much stuff you have, isn't it? Like when you move and you just think like I have to take it all with me. And then you move it to the next place and then you never use it again also. And then when you move again you also still want to take it again with you to the next place. Yeah. Moving home.
It's worse when you move from big to smaller place. When you are moving first time when you get married and settling down from small 1 to 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom like that. But then you go downwards, it's very difficult. You have so much junk there, living in one house for 30 years and then you have to move.
So we had to work it out, and we gave some stuff away. We took some to the dump yard, which is not feasible, and we brought some to a new place.
Yes. Okay. Anyone else think about moving through different spheres of life?
I was thinking in a different way. As moving, I was thinking like as we move along from childhood to as Smita Mataji was saying, I was thinking in the same term.
Okay.
Moving, meaning like, you're growing from baby to child to youth to, and you're still carrying all your, I don't know, it's all your ego and all your subtleness you're carrying with you. You think you're growing older and older, but your subtleness is coming with you, and you're carrying all your baggages with you as you go along. You're not dropping anything out unless you really spiritually inclined, and then you start thinking, oh, this is my ego, this is my false attitude, this is my pride, this is my all these things. And until you start dropping that down, you're not making any progress spiritually, because you're carrying the baggage with you until you are 70, 60, So I was thinking that term.
Wow, yeah. So it's like again, just moving through different stages of growing up, but in a very much more deep way. Yeah. Isn't it like that with New Year's resolutions? Like how many people have had the same New Year's resolution just ongoing? I know I've done that many times. Right. So we're just carrying that same baggage from year to year, isn't it? Has anyone experienced that, or just me? Yeah. So the good news is that this is just our false ego. This is not our real ego, or in Sanskrit it's called ahankar. Has anyone heard of that word before? Ahankar? Who's heard of that term before? Okay, almost everyone. Yeah, ahankar means false ego. So this material identity that we have, it kind of follows us around. It covers us from what our real nature is. In the same way that the clouds, they cover the moon, and the moon appears to be shimmering. So it actually covers this. So our self is covered. The true self, the true identity is covered. Because we're so busy, caught up in these different identities. And this actually happens from not just throughout this life, but from lifetime to lifetime. So just like the person is moving from one house to another house, the soul has to move from one body to another body, and it still carries all those things from body to body to body. And therefore we have karma from so many different bodies, which we want to hold on to and carry on with us. From one house to another house, we want to carry things with us. from one body to another body, we want to carry so many aspects of this ahankara, or this material personality. Okay.
So, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. So really, when it's saying different spheres of life, because you're saying all this, we tend to forget that we're actually the soul, and we're not this body. So
it has to be a constant reminder. We have to constantly remind ourselves. Prabhupada, practically in every lecture, when you hear Srila Prabhupada's lecture, any lecture, practically in every single lecture, Prabhupada would make this one point again and again in the same lecture, and again and again in every lecture. What would Srila Prabhupada say?
We are not the body, we are part and parcel of Krishna.
Yeah, and we have to hear it an unlimited number of times. To keep reminding ourselves, we have to keep reminding ourselves every day. We have to keep reminding ourselves, this is not me. When I wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, this is not me. This is not me. I'm spirit soul, I'm servant of Krishna. And that will actually make us happy when we try and uncover who we really are, when we become self-realized. Yeah.
So I think better we don't look in the mirror.
Yeah, unless when we're putting on tilak. Even the mirror can be used for that.
Yeah, only for a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
Not for hairstyle.
That's why Prabhupada has made everybody shave their hair, so they don't have to for that.
It's like I have a good experience. I was in Mayapur, and I was inspired by other devotees, because nearly all devotees you find with no hair or short hair, So I went to the barber, and I thought, let me try while I'm in Mayapur, because it's difficult to if you want to try in London or somewhere else, because you have to be in that kind of environment. So I went to barber and I said, okay, this much. And he cut even shorter than that. So I thought, anyway, he started, so he has to finish it, He can't leave it. But next day, when I was having shower, and I realized, I thought, this is good. Right? Because it's very, you feel different,
Yeah.
Putting water every day.
And he doesn't have to look for his
Because when you have a
all the
longer
time.
hair, sometimes you wash them every few days, every other day, whatever. And I thought, this is good. And I just, then coming back to London, I just carried on. It was a question of getting used to,
Yeah.
And then to carry on, I thought, well, answer is, I went to supermarket and I got that handy machine, trimmer. And since that, I have never been to barber.
Saves you money as well, isn't it?
And I don't have to carry a comb in my pocket. That's biggest thing, actually.
Yeah. Vimal's just turned his camera off. But I know Vimal, if you saw his picture just a few weeks ago, you would have seen that he looks like just how he is in that picture, actually. And now look at Vimal.
Yes, actually, that is the reason why I shaved my head, and I had to show a picture of what does a shika look like, and I had to show it to the barber. He goes, "What is this?" I said, "Well, I don't want to look in the mirror anymore. I spend a lot of time, and I'm very vain. I love looking at myself, so I've got to remind myself I'm not the body." So I shaved it off. I had this shika, even though it's freezing cold. Just a reminder for me, just to remind myself, and it works. I like days I'm like, just get on with it, and I spend less time in the shower.
Yeah. Okay. So that's so this is false ego. You see the way that we decorate our body, whether it's with our hair or with our clothes or in so many different ways. Okay. Were you going to say something as well, Shashi Mataji? No, okay.
Yeah, false ego
Hmm.
coming from material desire, isn't it?
Yes.
And then you get used to it, it increases, you know, and you don't realize that. Unless you practice Krishna consciousness very seriously, because that's, in Prabhupada language, it's the best medicine.
Yeah, the false ego comes from the original desire to be separate from Krishna. That's where false ego comes from. So that's kind of the initial reason that the soul leaves the spiritual world, the spiritual nature, and comes to the material nature. So it's actually not possible for a soul to live without that spiritual nature. So there's an illusory environment created. The material world is just an illusory environment. So Krishna has to create a playground, for us to play in, because we don't actually belong here. So that's where this false ego comes from. The original desire to first be away from Krishna. Then all the other smaller desires that come along.
That's why I compare our mind with the storage, because our mind is a storage, and what we put in, material desire, is full of material desire, so there is no space for spirituality. So we have to, if you want to become a spiritual, then you have to empty your mind first, Make a space in the storage.
Yeah. So the easy way of doing that is to fill the mind with Krishna.
Yeah.
Pushes everything else out. Okay. We can thank you, Prabhu, for adding those points. Amu Mataji, do you want to make a comment? Question?
Actually, Linisha has a question, Prabhu. I don't know how
All right.
to answer that regarding this material desire and coming back.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm sorry I couldn't attend today's class, but I just had a question because I've heard people say, like Krishna conscious people say that we're here on like the material world because we wanted to be separate from Krishna. So then if we go back to Krishna, will we have the desire to come back from, like, separate from Krishna again? So then are we going to come back here again? Like, does that make sense?
Very good question. So the question is, we've desired to come away from Krishna. When we return to Krishna again, when we go back home, back to Godhead, as Srila Prabhupada says, then is there a risk that we could come back again? So good question. Krishna actually promises in Bhagavad Gita, once having returned to me, one will never return again to the material world. So in our innocence, let's say, we may have wanted to see what it's like, a life without Krishna. We're eternal. Krishna is eternal. The spiritual world is eternal. But the soul has free will, just like Krishna has free will. And so Krishna doesn't force us to stay with him. So out of innocence or ignorance even, the soul may want to turn away from Krishna just to see. And when we do that, we fall into this world of darkness. But Krishna does promise us in Bhagavad Gita that once having returned to him, Krishna will remind us now never to go back to this material world.
Okay.
Krishna has let us see for one moment, because even if we're here for millions of lifetimes, it's still just a moment in eternity. So Krishna will remind us that we don't want to do this again.
Thank you, Prabhu. Answered my question.
So how come, Haribol,
Krishna?
Yes, Prabhu?
how come we separated from Krishna at the first place?
Why did we move away from Krishna in the first place?
Yeah, because we were with him, right?
Yes, that's right.
And if
So,
Krishna says, if we go back to Godhead and then he promises we never come back again. So what's I mean, it is little bit contradiction that how we separated as the first place.
No,
Because
so you had material desires.
but then what is the guarantee we won't have material desire again?
That's what then Krishna is reminding you where you want, what is your free will. But he can answer better than
so there's no contradiction because we have free will. So we're free to stay here, we're free to go there. So the soul decides that I want to see what it's like there. I just want to see. And Krishna will say, no, no, don't go there. It's horrible. Don't go there. But Krishna doesn't force us to stay in the spiritual world with him. Just like when in the Agasura pastime. Do you remember when you read Agasura? Yeah? Who was Agasura?
Dima.
Does anyone remember? I'm putting you all on the spot here.
He was a demon.
He was a demon. Right answer. But more specifically, how did he look? Okay, I'll let you off because it's New Year's.
Snake demon?
Huh?
He was a snake demon.
Snake demon, yeah. So Agasura, he was a snake demon. All the children, all the boys, they wanted to run into the mouth of Agasura. Their desire was, let's go and run into that massive cave that's just appeared from here, from nowhere, you know? They all had that desire to go there and run into the cave. And they thought, Krishna will save us. Krishna always saves us. So, they just ran into the cave. And it's described in that pastime. Krishna was standing behind and he was shocked, like, what are you doing? That's a demon. You're running into the mouth of it. And even he was shocked, like how amazing this material energy is that it could create such a horrible demon. It's explained like that. So there's a lesson in there that this is like us coming into the material world. We think, let me just see, let's just have fun. But then all of a sudden, the boys were snatched away by Maya. They were all fainted in the mouth of that demon. So like that, then Krishna came and he had to personally go and save them. So we should take this message, message of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is personally coming to save us in the incarnation of his books, in the incarnation of his holy name. He's personally coming to save us. So we should take that message very seriously. So we desired, Krishna gives us the desire to come here, or rather we have the desire that we want to come here. Krishna doesn't take that away. But it's not contradictory because once we go back, Krishna will remind us. Remember that desire you had? Remember I told you not to do it? And then we'll say, okay, yeah, you're right, Krishna. That was a horrible nightmare, going into that mouth of Agasura, or going into the material world. I hope that I've explained it well. I don't know. Is it okay?
One thing I like what you said, Krishna remind us. Because otherwise soul can have material desire again, separate from Krishna, again and again, right repetition.
Yes.
But if Krishna remind us, then you become purified.
Yes. So in the spiritual world, there's no material desire.
Yeah.
There's only service to Krishna. But if the soul wants to see what it's like to be served, to become the master, to not to serve Krishna, but to be served, then that's the original material desire. That's where ahankar comes from.
In another language, you can say soul has, what do you call it? She wants to experience separate from Krishna.
Yeah. Wants to experience.
What it looks like, yeah.
Where Srila Prabhupada says the soul wants to enjoy separately from Krishna. So that's not actually possible, because as we all know, we're not enjoying so much in this world as we can in the spiritual world. So Krishna will remind us, don't worry, that we don't want to be here anymore.
Can I ask a question? Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, can I ask a question on the soul one that you mentioned?
Yes, please let us know your name.
My name is Madhu. Yeah, will soul has desires?
Right. Sorry, that was the question. Does the soul have desire?
Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. So, yeah, of course, the soul is the living force, and the symptom of life is consciousness. Consciousness means desire, free will. So even though we have certain karmas, we're bound in this world. We have a free will as well. So there is destiny and there is free will. Now the soul is therefore not like a robot. You can never create life in the way you can create, all these amazing computers and technologies. Now they have this concept of artificial intelligence, AI. They're teaching computers how to think for themselves, how to live for themselves almost. So it won't be long before robots will start doing all the things we're doing. But they'll never have one thing which is free will or desire. That's something which can only come from life, which can come from the soul. So it's not a biological mechanism. It's not a psychological like disposition. That comes from the soul, consciousness and life.
Thank you, Swami. Thank you.
Okay. So perhaps we can continue from here. How about we have the next reader then? So Mom, would you like to read one? You're on mute at the moment.
Is it starting from the peacocks? Yeah. Stop there. Yeah. The peacocks can be
just before
compared
that.
to,
In the rainy season, when the clouds.
Yes, that's the one.
In the rainy season, when the clouds appear for the first time, the peacocks dance with joy upon seeing them. The peacocks can be compared to persons who are very much harassed in the materialistic way of life. If they can find the association of a person engaged in loving devotional service of the Lord, they become enlightened and dance just like the peacocks. We have practical experience in this. Many of our students were dry and morose previous to their coming to Krishna consciousness. For having come into the contact with devotees, they are now dancing like jubilant peacocks.
Wow, that's amazing. So has anyone else experienced that in their life? Life before Krishna, life with Krishna? Just if you like to raise your hand or... Yeah? I certainly have. Like what do people do these days to have a good time? To have a song and dance? What do people have to do to be merry?
Drink. Alcohol.
Drink. Yeah, drink. Drink, drugs, all this kind of thing, So that's one kind of enjoyment, isn't it? To intoxicate, to be intoxicated. To actually poison yourself so that you forget the miseries of life. That's really what these drinks and drugs do, isn't it? So, but then look at the devotees in contrast, You just go to Oxford Street one afternoon and you see bald-headed men singing and dancing up and down. Anyone who doesn't know better would think these guys are on drugs. What are they taking? I want that. And then we pass them a book and we say, no, just read this spiritual wisdom, just chant Hare Krishna. It's the natural high. Be high on life. Be high on the soul, on spirituality.
I've got something to add to that. Whenever you go, I mean, this is the first year in the last few years that I haven't been on a New Year's Eve Harinam. So whenever we go on a Harinam on New Year's Eve, it's so amazing to see that, we are chanting and dancing and everything. There'll be so many people. We go right up to the Thames River and doing Harinam, and you see so many of the people who got bottles of drink, and they think they're really happy drinking, and they think they're really happy enjoying the New Year's Eve. But as soon as they see the devotees coming in with the chanting and dancing, they come and join us, and they seem to be really like, some of them really follow right up to the temple. So they can see that, although they're drinking and feeling, basically they're thinking that by drinking and going out on New Year's Eve, you're enjoying yourself and you're making the most of the New Year's Eve. But when they realize that, this is the outer happiness. So once they start joining in the kirtan and they can feel that taste, just even a glimpse of that taste, they can see that there is inner happiness without the drink and drugs, that we are trying to get happiness from this, the high they get from the drink, and it's more high than when you join this spirituality, you feel the more high in yourself. So you can see when you go on this New Year's Eve Harinam, you can see so many of them on the road trying to enjoy, but when they start joining in the kirtan, they realize this is something more deeper.
Yeah. And of course the high that comes from the drink and drugs, that doesn't last for them. They have a down afterwards, or a crash, or what they call a hangover, or but for us, every day is like a party. Our party starts 4:30 in the morning, singing and dancing. People kind of imagine that kind of lifestyle. That's when, for those of us who've been to Soho Street Temple or go to Mangalarti there, I'm sure Madhvi Mataji and Sachinandan Prabhu will know. You go there for Mangalarti, right? The first thing you see before you come into the temple is what, Mataji, Prabhuji?
Yeah, people are lying around and say coming out of nightclubs and just with themselves.
Yeah, they're trashed, isn't it? People are just completely finished. and and they're ready to go to bed, and we're waking up. We're like running to the temple. So Bhagavad Gita says, what is day for the materialist is like night for the spiritualist. What is night for the spiritualist is like day for the materialist. So practically you can see that. There's a day and night difference in our happiness.
I have seen people stealing milk bottles early morning from a doorsteps of the office.
Yeah. So there's no limit to like the amount of mischief people do when under influence. So you see that people are not happy. It's a simple symptom, isn't it? That people are not happy in the world. No matter how aristocratic someone may be, or how well positioned someone is, still they have to feel like they have to drink to have a good time. It's actually a very sorry state, isn't it? Prabhupada was so compassionate, to go and give this Hare Krishna mantra to everyone. And actually, who did he go and give to first? The people who needed it the most. It's unbelievable. Prabhupada, he went to the New York in the place called the Bowery, and the place he was staying, of course, he went there with no money, so he had to stay in the most rotten places with the most like degraded type of people. Such a sacrifice coming from Vrindavan, and the person who he was staying with even tried to attack him, tried to kill him once because he wanted money, or he was like, I think what's it called? He was like delusioned, or So in his like this state, he tried to even kill Prabhupada. you know. Prabhupada had his typewriter stolen, his Bhagavad Gita manuscript stolen. Huh? But Srila Prabhupada was unaffected. He was just in this transcendental happiness, carrying on, carrying on, carrying on for Krishna. Unstoppable.
His watch as well, isn't it? Watch.
Watch as well, yeah?
Yeah.
So, what an amazing personality, Srila Prabhupada. So, night and day, you know, that happiness. You can see in the where Prabhupada was staying, one person was like that, and Prabhupada was like this. Okay.
Yeah, Prabhupada turned hippies to happies, isn't it, Prabhu?
Yeah, so Prabhupada said, some reporter asked Srila Prabhupada, and what is hippies, Srila Prabhupada? Because, you know, the reporters, they would always ask Srila Prabhupada very controversial things. And the devotees, they would always wait to hear, you know. Prabhupada always had really snap remarks, you know. Prabhupada said, well, you know better than me what is a hippie. Prabhupada, they asked him, what is a hippie? He said, well, you know better than me what's a hippie. But now they're becoming happy. So he said, this is our mission, to make the hippies into happies.
Linisha gave a talk in her class about Prabhupada today in her religious education. Yeah, everyone was inspired by his dedication towards spreading Krishna consciousness in the West. Yeah, it was good to hear.
Yeah, the life of Prabhupada is extraordinary, isn't it? All right, so we've not got long left now, have we? Who's the next reader? Is it yourself, Amu Mataji?
Yes, Prabhu, Linisha would like to read. Sorry, from where it is, Prabhu? I missed it.
Oh, we're just starting the next paragraph now. Plants and creepers grow by drinking water from the ground.
Plants and creepers grow by drinking water from the ground. Similarly, a person practicing austerities becomes dry. But after austere performances are completed, he gets the result. He begins to enjoy life in sense gratification, with family, society, love, home, and other paraphernalia. He becomes jolly, like newly grown plants and grass. Sometimes it is seen that cranes and ducks.
Okay, we'll just stop there. Let's go into the next analogy now. So this first one, which we read, what is that about? What's the comparison here?
Plants and creepers grow by drinking water from the ground.
Yeah.
So similarly, a person practicing austerities for some material benefits, once they receive their benediction, they become happy and try to gratify their senses with their families, friends.
Yes. I'm trying to understand this one myself, actually. I'm just trying to work out, is this a positive thing or a negative thing? I think this analogy is like a negative thing, you know? That someone cannot do austerity for very long. You see, austerity makes one dry. This is the point here. Is that right? Does anyone else have a different point of view?
It's here, I think, austerities is described in a way of material enjoyment. I mean, working hard and that to accumulate wealth. And when they get the wealth, they just feel they are happy. They can do what they like, so enjoy with the family and all that. But in actually, they're going deeper in the well rather than.
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah, there's different ways to read this one actually. Does anyone else see a different way on this one?
I was thinking more on a different waypoint, that, like, the creepers and creepers grow by drinking water from the ground. Similarly, a person practicing austerities becomes dry. So when somebody is practicing austerities, meaning they doing not the normal thing, and when they're practicing austerities, they dry out, means they're drying up their material desires.
Okay.
That was what I was thinking in that term.
Yeah, I also thought of that one too, because so it's another way of looking at this part, because like when we come to Krishna consciousness, and when we hear you have to stop all these material activities, no drinking, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating, no illicit relations, you know. Prabhupada, he would say this to people, to influential people, and they were shocked. They were like, "Then what do you do? This is life itself. What do you do? You live such an austere life." They would comment like that, right? People comment like this when we tell them, huh? Not even tea, not even coffee. Huh? What do you do? How can you live? Huh? People think that you just die living like this. Hmm? But actually, you see, with these plants and creepers, they're dry, but they're becoming nourished in a very natural way. They're dependent on the water. They're dependent on the rain. We are dependent just the same way we are dependent on Krishna's mercy. Huh? Krishna's mercy is keeping us alive and happy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came to give the Harinam to everyone to make us all feel blissful, naturally blissful. So this is the type of happiness we want to taste. So actually every soul is dependent on Krishna, either directly or indirectly. So we want to directly have happiness from Krishna, and others, they are indirectly. They want to have happiness through intoxication, or all these illusory ways of happiness, which is making them dry, actually spiritually dry. So it said that spiritual life and material life goes ill together. You cannot one day do so many so many things which are damaging to the soul, and then another day we can do so many spiritual things to feel uplifted. In the same way, you cannot put fuel in the fire and then put water on the fire, put fuel in the fire and then water on the fire. So material life and spiritual life, they're very different in that way, although seemingly they look the same. So just like any devotee may go to work and have his job or his business, may earn his income and support his family and perform all his ordinary duties with other family members, go to ordinary family functions and so on and so forth. But their source of happiness, his source of happiness is different still. Even though this person can move around in society, as it said here, the happiness isn't based on those things. So it can be seen that way also. I don't know if that makes sense. What do you think? Any thoughts or comments? Question?
Well, it's a really beautiful analogy. I'm just thinking of like a plant growing, like, so this is obviously a hypothetical situation, but it's like the plant starts off on its own and there's not much water, but because it's got its roots in the ground, it kind of gathers a little bit of water from the earthly plane, and then as it starts growing, it's very dry, it's very austere, it feels very alone, and then sort of as it shows its effort, it's like meeting God halfway. So it's like as it starts showing its effort, then the heavens open and it's like Krishna's mercy sort of pours on the plant, and that sort of gives it gives a new motivation to keep going and keep growing. So it's like that, the earthly plane, when you finally meet with the spiritual, and then that sort of flourishes into more Krishna conscious enjoyment of sort of devotional activity, like what it says here. Yeah, with society, friends, love, home, other paraphernalia.
Yeah. And I think you have experience with gardening and that, right, Mataji? So you're aware that, huh?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
So you're aware, like when you have a seedling, you have to protect it so much, and then when it's germinated and it's appearing out of the ground, then you can actually plant it outside, you know, and then it can really benefit from the rain and you know, and the natural environment. So it's like that in our Krishna consciousness. In the beginning, we have to follow these things, and it may be a little bit austere, but actually, we're awakening a natural happiness which comes. Then we can be exposed to the rain, the natural environment, and the rain of mercy, as you say, from Krishna will come. Okay, so maybe we can fit in one more analogy now. So that will take us through to the end of this paragraph. Yeah, Apurva Mataji, you're the next reader.
Haribol, yeah. He becomes jolly, like newly grown plants and grass. Sometimes it is seen that cranes and ducks meander continually on the banks of the lakes and rivers, although the banks are filled with muddy garbage and thorny creepers. Similarly, persons who are householders without Krishna consciousness are constantly tarrying in material life, in spite of all kinds of inconveniences. In family life or any life, one cannot be perfectly happy without being Krishna conscious. Srila Narottam Das Thakur prays that he will have the association of a person, either a householder or a man in the renounced order of life, who is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and is always crying the holy name of Lord Chaitanya. For the materialistic person, worldly affairs become too aggressive, whereas to a person who is in Krishna consciousness, everything appears to be happily situated.
This one carries on a little bit from the philosophical points in the previous one. And then so what is the analogy of what is the analogy being compared here? Can anyone see what that is from the first sentence? So what part of nature is being brought up here?
Ducks who meander through the banks. So it's the muddy garbage being compared to the muddy garbage of materialistic life. That makes sense. So that's not a very nice way of putting things, but yeah. So it's so the muddy garbage that the cranes are meandering through are, I mean, in quality, materialistic life when compared to spiritual life is as bad, if not worse.
Yeah, it's a stark example, isn't it? Muddy banks being like material life, and the birds of the rivers, they're like kind of, as it says here, what is it, tarrying? What does it say here? Yeah, meandering on the bank. So they could be swimming in the fresh and clean waters, but instead they're kind of getting their feet dirty, as it were, in the muddy banks of the river. So has anyone seen that before? I'm sure we've all been down to the park, right? You've seen the ducks and swans and I don't know how many cranes. We don't get cranes here, do we? I don't know. So you see, they always kind of cluster around the bank, isn't it? Yeah. So that's compared to what's that compared to?
householders without Krishna consciousness?
Yeah, I had to read that twice actually. Because I thought when I first read it, I thought it's just compared to householders, but it's specifically householders without Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So it's a big difference being a householder with Krishna consciousness and a householder without Krishna consciousness. And that's why when, we, like in this group, there's no brahmacharis or sannyasis here, I don't think, in this group. So when we come to Krishna consciousness, it's quite a change, it's quite a big adjustment, huh? And this is the adjustment. We're going from these muddy banks to the clean rivers. So it's also saying that we're actually like these birds of water. The water environment is quite natural for them. In similar way, household life in Krishna consciousness is still very natural. It's actually quite a natural thing. But we become constantly, as it says, constantly tarried in this material life. We become like entangled, caught up in the materialistic aspects of the household life. So any thoughts on that? Any comments on that?
I just had a comment on that, before you become Krishna conscious and put Krishna in the center of your household life, your time, energy, and everything is gone into, okay, I want this, I want to get this job, I want to climb up the ladder of the workplace. And there bit of envy and bit of competition and bit of everything is there, and you're never satisfied with what you're getting. So that bit of satisfaction is not there, and because of that, the inner happiness is not there as well. But once you start, as it's saying here, that Narottam Thakur is asking for association, and once you get into a contact of a devotee, a pure devotee, and you start realizing that, this is not my happiness, where I'm envious of other people, or why this got a bigger car, or why this has got a really nice car, or near a nice house, or why their children are getting married in such a opulent way. So these sort of things, once you start getting into contact with a pure devotee and start practicing these austerities, all these muddy things come out, and then you feel that the inner happiness is not with us comparing with other people and going for what other people has got and creating that envy. That is not the real happiness. The real happiness is being satisfied with what we got, putting Krishna in the center of our life and serving other people. That is the real happiness. And you can feel it, because when you start serving other devotees and serving Krishna and doing service, you will feel the happiness, and that happiness is much more satisfying and much more inner. I don't know what the word is, but it is more inner feeling than the happiness you would go out and make the money and get that car that your neighbor has got or your friend has got. But once you got that car, you're not going to feel that happiness. So like if you have Krishna in the center of your heart, all these muddy things comes out of it. And then you don't feel that you want to aim for all these materialist things.
Yeah. I like the point you said about how service is like so central. In material life, the aim is to be served. To be appreciated, to be glorified. But in the spiritual householders, their motivation is to serve devotees, to serve Krishna, and to do services in the temple or at home. It's really amazing.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. And I think we also look at, I think, being the material, but then when you become a Krishna conscious, your or spiritual person. So I think you look at all the situation and making a decision, or anything happens in your life, you're always looking at the different perspective, other than if you're material. I don't know, you think, oh no, things, why is this happened, and so done it, and all that. But definitely when you Krishna conscious, you look at everything, because Krishna is always in center. You, whatever you do, whatever decision you make, or whatever happens in your life. So I think you look at everything very positive, and definitely different, on different perspective.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point as well. We have such a broad perspective, isn't it, on life? When we have Krishna consciousness, we can understand how everything fits in. There's no like bewilderment of, someone put me down, so I have to push them out and put myself up and all this.
Yeah.
If some situation happens which, is out of our control, then, we can understand it in the greater plan of Krishna. We understand what it's meant to be for.
Just wanted to add one more thing that I heard in a lecture a couple of times, and Maharaj was talking about he knows a lot of people from Bollywood and Hollywood who are at the top of their careers, and he was talking about a couple of them who went to see him, and they said that although they were on the top of the career, they had all the women who were very pretty and everything. They had them in their life. They had all the money, they had all the fame, and they had everything in life they could buy, everything they could have. One of the example is Michael Jackson. He had everything, but they were never satisfied, because the only reason is there was no inner happiness. So they were turning into drugs and various other things, but even the drugs and drinking never gave them that inner happiness, which can be, the soul is always looking for inner happiness, and that happiness is not achieved by all these things. So there are so many examples of so many famous people, so many rich people, so many people who have made it right up to the top with money, but they're still not satisfied, and the inner happiness is not there. It's basically, it's just because soul is seeking happiness and service to Krishna, which is not in their life.
Yeah. It definitely helps when we put it in the perspective of like, who do we look up to? Who are our role models? There's so many Krishna conscious householder role models, actually. When we just look a little bit deeper, there's so many role models in this world, and not very different from the role models that we might go for if we are not Krishna conscious, if materialistic. And the story never ends well, unfortunately, for those with materialistic role models. Okay. Okay, so we're over time a little bit.
People running after external happiness because they don't know what inner happiness means. It's in Prabhupada language, it's a four fund of knowledge.
Right, yeah.
And after external happiness, they suffer as well, but they don't understand where it's coming from. But once once they get real knowledge, then they start practicing Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, this is the central point, actually, that people are just very unfortunate. That's what it really is. It comes down to, like, what did we do to deserve Krishna? I don't know. I don't know what I did, to deserve so much mercy and so much care and guidance and support and direction. So we're not so different in one sense from people who don't know Krishna, but someone came and told us. So it very much becomes our duty to help people because they're in this poor fund of knowledge, Prabhupada would say, or they're very unfortunate. Yeah, so this is the mission of Krishna consciousness, isn't it? To make the unfortunate people fortunate. So we have to have a taste for that ourselves before we can give to others. So moving on to the next part of the program, we'll do one round of japa now.